Our first discussion focuses on Guinea, where the military leader, General Mamady Doumbouya, has registered his interest to stand as a candidate in the country's first presidential election, scheduled for the 28th of December. It will be the country's first election since the coup which brought General Doumbouya into power in 2021. When he seized power, he promised not to run, but a charter barring members of the military government from contesting elections was replaced by a new arrangement. This paved the way for him to make the move. Among other compulsory requirements, the charter states that presidential candidates must be resident in Guinea and they must be between the age of 40 and 80. The upcoming election is targeted at restoring constitutional order in Guinea. Now, for more on the upcoming election in Guinea, African Affairs analyst Amuda Mosibuji joins me from the Oyo State capital, Ibadan. Good to have you join us, Amuda.
Thanks so much for having me.
The much-awaited transition in Guinea to democratic rule, but what do you make of General Doumbouya's control of the transition calendar itself, and also now being a candidate in this race after promising not to run?
Well, I think it's going to be funny of anyone not to see that the general was going to contest the election. The thing for some people being made by making the speakers all over the world
Amuda, if you can hear me, your voice is a bit muffled. If you're using earpiece, maybe you should take it off.
All right, okay. Well, I hope you can hear me now.
I can hear you, just slightly muffled.
I hope it's better now.
All right, go ahead, it's better.
Hello.
Amuda, go ahead, we can hear you, it's better now.
All right, yeah. So it's going to be funny for anyone not to think that he was going to contest. We've seen that. And oftentimes what we see is the legitimization of military rule by these leaders. We've seen that play out over and over in Africa. So it's not coming as a surprise. And of course, the way he has also been able to muzzle out a lot of opposition leaders, particularly those who could give him a run for his money, former president and former prime minister, is not also surprising. So for me, it's not coming as a surprise. It is something that is expected.
And we're also now saying that the biggest opposition parties have been excluded from the race. The major candidates, former President Alpha Condé himself, most of them are on exile. I'm just wondering what implication this will have on the credibility of the election.
Well, I don't know what credibility anyone would expect from an election conducted by a military junta. You can be sure, particularly where the head of that junta is a candidate in the election. What he has done is what every military government does, or every dictatorship does. He has muzzled that, and he simply tells you that that election is already, conducted and won already even before the election day. You will not be surprised if what we see is a play out of the Tanzanian results, where Mahmoud will be having, maybe say 95% of the votes. And more so, if you also look at it, when he went to the Supreme Court to file his application, you saw supporters, trailing him and following him to the Supreme Court. That speaks to the fact that regardless of whatever side you want to pick, he would always have those, or he has those who are in support of his ambition within the Guinean state.
And let's talk about ECOWAS, which is now seeking a credible handover in Guinea. But I'm just wondering how low is the bloc's leverage after a wave of Sahel coups and the frictions inside ECOWAS itself?
Well, I think ECOWAS at the moment is crippled, and that's why you will not see anything serious coming from ECOWAS. When these military takeovers were happening, people were expecting the big stick. But then we are no longer in the 1990s where, a country would wake up and just jump into another country. The dynamics of international diplomacy, international politics has changed. And so you cannot have that play out again. So there is this crave and there's this improved and increased drive for respect for sovereignty of countries. So there is really little or nothing that ECOWAS can do or could have done in this regard. And eventually what we'll see is that maybe after the election, the Guinean military junta will find a way of easing itself back into ECOWAS, and it will be back to the status quo ante. So I would not be surprised if that plays out, because again, this is not the first time. We saw what is playing out in Mali as well, and then other countries are following the track. So these military leaders are also contesting for elections, which is their right. You cannot deny them of that right. It's just a moral question of whether it is right for them to contest or not. So I see them maybe after the election finding their way into ECOWAS and building or ensuring that necessary reintegration back to the rest of the West African brothers.
The picture you painted of countries insisting on their sovereignty seems to only be limited to the African countries themselves, within themselves, saying, look, respect our sovereignty. But it doesn't seem to apply to foreign actors, because we have a very strong presence of Russia in some of these countries. The EU is there, China is there, and up until now we also have France, a very strong presence of France in this country. And I'm wondering whether you think that these foreign actors will play any role in this presidential election.
Well, the thing is, what we have in international politics is the place of balance of power. And unfortunately, none of the West African country is a major player in international politics. So we may be a major player. For instance, Nigeria is a major player within the West African sub-region, but then Nigeria, and of course the African region. But then Nigeria is not a major player in the global space, at the global level. So that respect for sovereignty is as a result of the fundamental principles and, of course, foreign policy drives of the countries that are within this sub-region. That explains why they would ensure that respect. Now, the foreign powers have further interests. They have an interest bigger than, respect for sovereignty, although they would also cloud, clone whatever they are doing within the framework of respect for sovereignty. But we know that who is going to call the policeman to question, okay? Who is going to watch the watchdog? And that's why when these foreign powers exceed the limits of their powers by encroaching on the sovereignty of another country, there is little or nothing that can be done. Even don't forget that even in international politics, we say that there are limitations to sovereignty. And one of such is, the power play of foreign powers. And that's why we have that. In the case of the local actors here, you cannot but respect your neighbors, because these are neighbors in the real sense of it, compared to someone who is an outside who has nothing really in the real sense of it to lose.
And one must also say that engagement with a military leader is quite different from that of a civilian role. But we'll see how this plays out. We know ethnicity and much more will also play a role in this election. Thank you so much for your time. African Affairs Analyst, Amuda Musibodi. All right, we'll take a break now. When the world now returns, we will shift attention to the United States. Stay with us, everyone.